Hi, my name is Eric Edmeades, and I am incredibly excited and proud to be recording this year first ever episode of Adulting with Emilia. Why am I here? Well, because Emilia is one of my favorite people on the planet and my stepdaughter. She is a phenomenally interesting young woman that I've gotten to know over the last several years, and I'm really honored to be part of what I think is going to be one of the best podcasts ever made, and this is why. Emilia is exciting. I mean, she does incredible things. She's done circus. She's done kiteboarding. She makes steak better than anybody I know. But she's also deeply curious about the conditions of life. And so she created this podcast to interview some of the very best minds out there to discover the strategies and perspectives that will make it easier for young people to take advantage of the times they're in to live the best possible lives that they can. And so I'm really excited to kick off this very first episode to help you get to know Emilia better so you can enjoy her podcast just like I will be. So, shall we begin?
Yes, I'm really excited to do that. It's going to be the first time, we will be speaking here.
All right. So, Emilia, I kind of want to start with you are living in a time that I can't really relate to. What I mean is that, when I was born, I was like 20 some odd years away from the internet. I wouldn't see my first computer until I was 18 years old. You probably had a phone by the time you were 15. Like, you're living in a very, very different time. And I'm curious, with you and your friends, what are some of the biggest concerns that you guys have, that your generation is having about life today?
For me, I think one of the most complicated things is actually having too much information and too many opportunities, which is a gift. But at the same time, like you said, you didn't even have phones. We can go to YouTube, look at any person talk. We can buy courses online. We can look up anything that we want. If I'm curious about how frogs live, I can look that up. Or how some small detail on a plane works, I can look it up. But before, you need to maybe go to library or find the experts. So we can do anything that we want. But at the same time, it's really overwhelming because you don't know where to start, what to do. And also, there's so much different information. I could be interested about health, but I could find 10 experts saying exactly the opposite things. So how to navigate all this information and the opportunities, go to university, not to go. There's just so much, and nobody teaches us the instincts and how to trust yourself and find the right information.
Yeah, that is really complicated. I'm reminded that when I was about 12 or 13 years old, I had a project to do at school. I had to do a paper about cheetahs. And you know me, I love Africa and I love the wilderness, so I was very into that project. But I remember it meant putting on my boots, putting on a winter coat, trudging through the slush and snow of Eastern Canada, going to the library, finding the encyclopedia section, looking up cheetahs, then finding more books about cheetahs. I mean, it was an entire morning process to get all the information and then to write it all out. And what's crazy is I still remember that paper today. I can picture the way I wrote it. Whereas if you're curious about cheetahs today, you just go, "Hello, ChatGTP, tell me about the cheetah." The cheetah is the fastest land animal. I mean, the information is right there, which means that you don't have to work that hard to get it. And I wonder if it makes it less valuable in some way.
I'm sure, and harder to remember because you don't have the process going through all those things, and that's overwhelming for the brain also because you have so much knowledge about everything, but not maybe specifically, and then you feel you're not good at anything.
There's a lot of that going on right now. I mean, we could be talking about that in the health space like you talked about. One minute you've got Dave Asprey telling us that we should be eating kale, and then we've got, or that we shouldn't eat kale. I'm sorry, Dave.
Get it.
Sorry, Dave. Exactly my point, right? And then you've got, another influencer that says that you should, and then you have the same thing with the news. You've got the one news channel that says this, leader is a bad leader, and the next one says there's just a lot of back and forth information. And so I think one of the things I'm really excited about is I like the way you think. I mean, I've known you a long time now. I like the way you analyze and look at things. And I think that what you're going to bring to your podcast is some focus, trying to help people actually get to a position of truth. And I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, and I want people to be able to pick up information and they decide what they bring along to their lives and what they agree with and what they don't. because you don't need to agree with everyone, but you can always find your truth and still listen to the things that you don't agree with and still gain knowledge.
Yeah, you know that I'm a big fan of that idea. One of the things that I find difficult in today's world is that it seems as though the minute there's a disagreement, the one side tries to silence the other side. And I think that you and I are in agreement about, hey, we need to be able to listen to both sides to find out what's really going on.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a different question. Tell me now, if you can think of something that you believed was true about being an adult, and that now that you're in this early stage of being an adult, you realize it's just not the way it is. Like things that you thought as a kid that you're now passing in and going, oh my gosh, it's not like that at all.
Okay, I think when you turn 18 or like some age, that you're gonna feel like, okay, like now I'm ready for this life and I have some skills. Of course, I'm still in the beginning, but like now I'm an adult and, I know how to do these things. But I feel like it's a longer process. And traveling, I felt like I stayed in these hotels when I was modeling, and I remember like checking in, and I felt like I had this feeling like I'm not supposed to be here, like I'm doing something illegal. The same with like driving cars. I have my license, but I still feel like I shouldn't be here. Like they're gonna come and they're gonna find out. They're gonna find out that I'm like not supposed to be here. And I thought like that's something weird that I have and it's gonna fade. And then the other day we were having dinner and you said something like that you have the feeling. I was like, oh my God. And so I think nobody ever like fully feels like they've grown up.
Yeah.
Maybe you can confirm more, but I feel like it's not a process that like, okay, now I'm a grown up and now I know. It's more like you're always going to be learning.
Do you know, I think about growing up in that way quite a lot, and how much do you let go of the child version of yourself or not? But that feeling you're describing, I mean, I admit that these days I can check into a nice hotel and I feel like I belong there. I've kind of gotten to that place. I've had a lot of it over the last, 10 years or so.
I do belong there, but I still shouldn't be there.
But that's what I mean. I get that. Like, I remember the first few times when, I got upgraded to business class, or when clients like paid for me to go in business class. It was so special. But I'd often be up there half expecting that they would come along and go, sir, you're in the wrong seat. So it's like, I'm with you. We belong there. But I also can understand that feeling of it's new. It's new and a little foreign. Let's turn to a little bit of background stuff. So you're Estonian. And you grew up in Estonia, but your parents traveled a fair bit with you. You guys went to Vietnam and some other cool places. I know the stories, Thailand and so on. But now you've also lived in another country. You lived in the Dominican Republic for many years. So I guess I'm curious how you feel about culture from the perspective of somebody who's lived in at least two countries so far, and you've traveled to so many now.
I think it changes people a lot depending on where you're from and where you grew up. I feel like Estonia has been the perfect place to grow up and go to school. I think the school system here taught me a lot of discipline and different personalities and like how to work. And I feel like people here are maybe not like smiling on the streets so much, but they're really true people. Like once you get to their hearts, they're gonna be there for you. And I always have like amazing friends and family to come to here. Dominican Republic felt for me the most home ever, like the second that I went there, because probably we've been traveling so much. I always felt like maybe like too open-minded or too happy for a normal Estonian. And then when I went there, I just met the most amazing people, and I've always dreamed of living on the beach and having this different kind of lifestyle. And that defined who I am today, like a lot, because the culture there is really different. People are really open-minded, like loud. It's like Latin America, so it's and my first parties were there, my first relationships and everything. So I think it's an interesting like mix of cultures. They're really different, but I'm happy to be part of both.
Yeah. I came to Estonia the first time over 10 years ago, and what I saw was initially, a very sort of flat emotional experience. It's like people don't offer much in the way of emotion. But once you get to know them and they relax and they get to know you. Estonia is one of the warmest countries I've ever been to. Okay, not the temperature outside, but I mean the people. But what I noticed is, and you said like you feel like you were maybe a little more outgoing or a little bit more open than say the normal Estonian. But what I notice is, as you've probably seen, I mean, we've had many of our Estonian friends and relatives, your dad and others have come to stay with us. Haven't you noticed that many of them, when they get to the Dominican Republic, they open like that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's almost like they needed permission to just be themselves.
And I have like two versions of myself. I'm not a different person, but it's a different me. And I was just sending a voice message to my friend the other day, like I miss the Dominican version of me. Like I feel like I've been boring for too long and like too serious. I need to go out and I need to go there.
Yeah. All right, let's turn to something that you and I have talked about before. You came to me once and you said, I'm not sure that I've suffered enough. I mean, you didn't say it like that, but you basically said, look, I've interviewed these people and I see people speaking and I see people on social media, all these speakers and authors, and they went through all this horrible trauma and pain and now they're successful and I've had no trauma and pain. So what am I going to do? I'm curious how you feel about that now. I mean, you've been kind of having that thought for a little while, but you're 20 now. You've now done a bunch of the interviews of your podcast. I'm curious how you feel about that.
Well, I still feel like hearing these people's stories that I haven't suffered enough, but I can definitely see like some of the things where I got some experience and understanding and expanding my like vision. Yeah, with that. So I think one of the things was my parents breaking up. I think a lot of people today's world go through that.
Yeah.
So it's not that like uncommon or traumatic, but it still is, because that like moment when it happened, it was my whole world. Like I was used to traveling with my family, always spending time with them, and I couldn't imagine life without it. And I, even though I already had this like belief in me that it's good for something, I was like, I can't see what it's good for. I didn't understand. So it took time and it was really hard for me. I thought I was never going to be happy again. I remember I told my mom that I'm never going to smile in my life again. Today, I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't change anything. And I'm really happy the way things are. But it was a process. And I mean, it took a lot of work. And another thing that comes to my mind actually is I had a bacteria in my finger about now, maybe 4.5 years ago. And it was horrible. Like we didn't even know what was wrong. We were in Dominican Republic. My finger started turning black. The tissue started dying. Also, the language barrier. We didn't know the quality of the doctors. At first, we didn't find the right doctor, so they did wrong procedures on me. All the pain, it was something that I've never experienced before. And yeah, we just didn't know what was going on because everything on my body felt wrong. I told my mom, I think I'm going bad, because I had this
I remember
stains on my body, and it was horrible. Like I remember my mom was sitting next to me and breathing, and that was too much moving for me, because I like at some point I actually thought like, okay, if I'm gonna die, it's gonna be easier, because the pain is like when it's so long and like consistently, it's hard. But that made me stronger and like gave me a different perspective and like how much I value health today.
Yeah.
And why I take care of it. And also modeling these experiences of like living in different conditions. One of my trips to Korea, I was supposed to be there 3 months. I ended up being there, I think, 2. But I lived in a modeling apartment with 11 girls. I shared the room with 3 other girls, like in bunk beds. We had 2 bathrooms, so when we had castings at the same time, everyone needed to get ready. It was like minus 16 degrees Celsius. The kitchen was like on the balcony. It was still surrounded with glass, but it was like this much space. I mean, for models maybe it works, but yeah, so you were cooking with your jacket and everything, and I wasn't really ready to be there. I had to leave like right after holidays, and my friends were still like having their parties and everything, so I was in the right mindset. It was a lot of challenges. I can make an episode about that, but
I think that's kind of why I was asking about this, because when you've said that to me, I've thought to myself, okay, so you haven't had some of the really horrible traumas that you've heard about, that people have shared about and so on, but You have had significant challenges. I mean, as you mentioned, the divorce, and I remember when you were in Korea. I mean, it was incredibly painful. But I remember something you said that really stuck with me at that time is that many of the models that were there with you were from Russia, and they weren't suffering as much as you.
Mm-hmm.
You remember you said this? It was really interesting to me. You said because their conditions were harder before they got there, the conditions in Korea weren't as difficult for them. And then in a weird way, because your life had been so good, it made Korea even harder for you.
Yeah, and they've been like, some of them have just like modeled so much, so they're so used to it. And I remember I got there, I was like crying, and I was like, oh my God, like how I'm gonna survive this. And they look so chill, and like
Yeah.
everything is okay, and they're like so happy to be there. And then I felt like something is even more wrong with me, because why are they so calm and why am I like panicked? So I was like, okay, I need this experience even more.
Yeah. And what I would say is that as I've watched you grow up, you have often taken the harder road. You've often challenged yourself. You really pushed yourself and you learned how to kiteboard. I mean, look, it looks all gorgeous and lovely when you're out on the water, but that first 2 weeks, the kite and the water and the wind, it beats you up badly, and you stuck with it and you kept going. Then before that, you went to the circus and you were so committed to it.
Flying trapeze.
Flying trapeze. We're talking flying trapeze without safety lines. You had practiced so much that you were doing like proper full stunts and so on. And so I guess what I would want to say to you is that, yeah, sometimes suffering does define us and it teaches us and it toughens us. But I feel like if you go out and choose really good challenges like you've done, then you get that strengthening from that. Because from my perspective, you have incredible depth of character, and you've got that depth of character because you have had challenges to go over, and you've also created challenges for yourself as well. So I think about that a lot ever since you've raised it with me. And I'm going to bring up, I have to bring up the growing up text message you sent me, because I opened my phone and it's 2:00 in the morning for you, wherever you were. And the message says something like this: I need help. I'm not young anymore. I'm not a baby. I'm an adult soon. I need to do something about it. I want to be rich. I want to have money. It's not okay that I just assume it's going to happen. Now I have to do something. I mean, I'm old. I'm 18. Now that's a very short version of a 3:00 in the morning rant. But there are those shocking moments when you begin to realize, oh my gosh, my life is actually up to me. And I feel like you've handled that with grace. And it makes me want to ask you this. I imagine most of your listeners are going to be between sort of 18 and 25 years old, and they definitely should be listening. And, if there are older people listening, listen too, but then pass this on to the young people. But so far, with the episodes that you've recorded about 9 or 10 episodes so far, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. If you had one message that you could share with the 18 to 25-year-olds today, what would you say to them?
Celebrate not knowing it and being on the journey, and enjoy the journey. Because I think a lot of the times, like, we're waiting to get there already. And most of the people, like, there's no place that you get there. And that's different for everyone. And the perspective changes sometimes before you, like, even get to the point, and then you have more goals. So share knowledge more, ask more questions from people who already know. Like, we also had a conversation the other day, that I think it was with you, that it's like we have lost traditions that we, like, different generations share knowledge, because you have so much knowledge, and like even my grandma, she has even more, and like this. And why are we not asking from them? Because they've had so many of the experiences that we are getting now, and just asking more and sharing more and being more open and not afraid of the judgment, and also exploring more yourself, because the only way you're gonna know is by trying, and then learning what you don't like and what you like. And yeah, not doing is the only thing.
That's the one thing.
Yeah.
That's many things, but I think it's
No,
good.
that was one message and then follow-ups.
One message with lots of different ways to deploy it. Okay, excellent. Let's turn a little bit to, what do you believe are the biggest obstacles for young people today? What is in the way? What is scary? What makes it challenging at the moment?
For me personally, is exactly too much option and not knowing what is like right for me, because nobody knows in the end of the day. But it feels like I have all these choices, and like of course I have some kind of idea what I want my future to look like, or how well I want to do in life, and I don't know what are the things that are going to get me there because there's so many ways. So having the trust in the process and knowing what to choose.
I really do find that paradox of choice to be difficult because, if we go back a few generations, basically you knew what you were going to be when you grew up. You were just following in your parents' footsteps. And then there became this new version where it's like you could choose between two or three things. You could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, your parents might direct your education. But then it came along to my generation and it was kind of like you can like do almost anything. And then it came to your generation, it's like you can do anything you want. And I think one of the problems with that is that when you have no choice, you just kind of proceed down that path. When you have two choices, you go down one path and you might find yourself wondering, I wonder what that other path might have been like. But when you can be anything, it's like in order to choose one thing and focus on it, you have to like let go of a bunch of other dreams. You have to kind of accept that those other realities aren't there. And I think that is one of the things that's really difficult. I look at all the kids that are jumping into university at the moment, and most of them they have no idea what they want to be when they grow up. They have no idea that the education that they're going after right now might be obsolete before they're even finished getting it. And so it's like, I can imagine that paradox of choice, like we think we want all this freedom, but it must be difficult.
I think the same problem actually you can see it in like different places, also the relationships. Before maybe people lived in one place, didn't travel so much, you had choice between maybe like few people and you need to stick with it because those were your only choices. But now it feels like you have so much choice because you can travel anywhere, so people I think break up more easily and give up more easily. And also food, like we have too much choice, so people go crazy. And also like in a way, me, even though I make healthy decisions, sometimes I'm like, okay, which one is even better, although it doesn't really matter, but you start being like crazy. And like, but also in a bad way, because there are like, even like Oreos are already bad, but then you have like 10 or like 20 different flavors. In Dominican Republic I saw Coca-Cola flavored Oreos.
Jeez. Well, the good news is, and I've just been writing about this, that the city of San Francisco has launched a major federal lawsuit against the top 10 processed food manufacturers, including Coca-Cola and I believe Nabisco. I think they might make Oreos, so maybe they're all in it together, Pepsi and Kellogg's and the like. And I have to say that the same thing happened when I was about your age. The city of San Francisco began taking legal action against the tobacco industry. You will never have to face this the way we did, but when I was your age, you could smoke on planes. You could smoke in a movie theater. You could smoke in every restaurant. Maybe there was a non-smoking section, but that was, that didn't care about the laws of physics. There was smoke everywhere. And then, of course, this began to change, and it changed with that legislation. And so, or with that litigation, I should say. And now the city of San Francisco has gone after big food in the same way. And I'm hoping that for you and all of the people of your generation and your children, that this is the beginning of a big change in the food industry, because I do think that the unbelievable choice of bad things is not ideal. Let's go with that, because now I want to, that food thing, of course, is very big for me and all the work I've done with WildFit and so on. But you've been on a really fascinating food journey. You mentioned the infection that you had in your thumb. That put you on broad spectrum antibiotics. That messed up your whole microbiome. Then you started developing skin problems and so on. And you thought you were going bad. and you started looking for solutions. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, the worst point was me in Korea, and I was modeling at the same time. So of course they expect really good skin. But for me, the reality was the opposite. It was worse than ever. I had never had to deal with like really bad acne before or anything. And I was devastated, and the stress made it even worse. I was quite healthy. Like if you consider like a normal way of eating, I ate like protein, vegetables. Sometimes I would have make cookies myself, but it wasn't enough. Like something was not working. And so with your help and the internet and everything, I started eliminating stuff, like seeing like, okay, maybe if I take this food out, I will get better. And eventually I've got my way to carnivore or hunter spring that you call in WildFit. And all my symptoms started improving right away. Like my skin got better really fast. and I didn't have brain fog. My headaches went away. My stomach felt good. I could focus again, which was a big problem after those surgeries. I remember I couldn't remember stuff, and I never had this kind of problems before. And I just felt better than ever.
Yeah.
And my skin was better than ever. So I was like, okay, I love meat. I love living this kind of way. Why would I even need to go back? And also I had this anxiety of like trying stuff because I never ever wanted to go back to feeling like my skin is so bad. I remember waking up every morning and like hoping that, okay, now if I go to the mirror, my skin is gonna be good. But it didn't happen overnight. Of course, I also went through this path of like trying all different kinds of skincare products that possible. Like anything that they recommended in TikTok, I was like, okay, I will try this. I remember even trying like, maybe this works. I mean, from all of those things, but you cut like potato slices and you put them on your skin, and this is supposed to suck out all the bad things. I mean, it didn't.
But instead, you decided to stop putting the bad things.
Yeah, and so I realized that you can do all these products and different treatments, but nothing really helps unless you take care of what you put in your body. Now it's been 3 amazing years, basically only being carnivore, with a few exceptions of like fruits in Dominican Republic when our friends would bring them from their garden, and yeah, enjoying life. Now I'm in this process of expanding a little bit and maybe changing between different seasons. So I've adapted eating carrots and onions, garlic.
Now you're going to be in trouble because all the carnivore people are going to come into your threads and go, I can't believe he did it.
I'm still planning to stay with my beliefs.
With some seasonal fluctuation.
Yeah.
And you know that I very much agree with that. It's funny. The other day I was watching, what's his face? I can't think of his name now. BioLane is his username on Instagram, the influencer. And he was criticizing all these people that used to be like advocates of the carnivore diet. And he was like criticizing them for changing. And I thought, such has the internet become that, controversy is what drives everything. And now if you can criticize people, you get extra views and so on. But I'm not critical of people when they change their views, when they've got more information. In fact, he mentioned Paul Saladino, and I found that really fascinating because in the years before you went through this, I sat with Paul Saladino at Gerard Butler's house. We were at a party. Gerard Butler.
I was there.
You were at that party. That's right, in LA. And Gerard Butler was singing Happy Birthday to Your Mom.
Yeah.
And Paul and I sat and had a really heated debate about the extremism of carnivores. And of course, my position was that carnivorism is like one end of the extreme spectrum, that veganism is the other extreme, and that humans have lived in the middle of that the whole time. And he and I really, it got to be quite a heated debate. And as you know, he then came out to visit with the Hadzabe people with me, and he then reintroduced honey and fruit and all that kind of stuff. And now BioLane thinks it's like, oh, it means he's a traitor to his cause. And you know what's really fascinating about this? This is, I think, partly what's wrong in the entire political world at the moment. Because if you change your views about something, you're a flip-flopper.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that if you change your views about something, you're a critical thinker. You're not stuck in an ideology. And so it's been really interesting for me because I've watched you fall into a trap that I fell into once. And the trap that I fell into was I was sick, I was facing surgery, I was in a lot of trouble, and then somebody convinced me to remove all these things from my diet. Processed food, refined sugar, but also meat. And the funny thing is when you remove processed sugar and you remove processed foods, you don't change your identity. You don't become a non-sugartarian. But for some reason, when you remove meat, you're immediately a vegetarian. And if you remove milk too, now you're a vegan and you have a label. And I took that label on as an identity and I attached it to the incredible health recovery I had. And as a result of that, I became incredibly scared, as you mentioned, about adding things back in. I'm not going to add in eggs. I'm not going to add in, but then my health started to suffer. And I went into the deeper research and kind of ended up getting to the place where, of course, I developed WildFit and all this sort of stuff. But it's been very interesting to me to watch you do that because, of course, when you switched into what we call Hunter Spring, which is Hunter Spring is like carnivore, but for a season. Mm-hmm. But you didn't go in for a season. You went for carnivore. You're going all the way. And it worked so well for you. I mean, you're incredibly healthy. Your skin is amazing. You've really turned everything around. But I had that wait a second, there is supposed to be some seasonal fluctuation. And it's been really interesting watching you experiment with that. So I'm going to be fascinated by how that takes shape on your podcast, because I'm sure some of the people that you interview over time will affect your thinking. And It'll be interesting to see where you land.
Yeah, and I can also share my journey because I'm still like, I believe that carnivore is amazing, especially for like some period of time fixing your problems and as a season. But I'm trying to also have different seasons. But I still recommend it.
That sounds good. Let me ask you, who are some of the bigger influences of your adulting period? Like what I mean is that, say from 18 until now, who are some of the people that have had a big influence on your view of the world and, the way you see things?
There's so many. Oh my god! No, it's like when someone asks you the names, the moment who's your favorite singer, then you're like blank. But I think something that really changed my world and opened me up was going to Mindville University the first time, because of course I think my parents have always been like more open-minded than most of the people, and yeah, like flexible. But I think that was the first experience. It was like school like, and we learned a lot, but there were like so many incredible people together talking about the things that were so interesting to me, and like I saw the world from a different perspective, and I was like so excited to be in this world and like to grow up and do all these things that they talked about and experience the world. So I think that changed me a lot. But of course, it kept on changing me even more every year, because at first I couldn't understand maybe most of what they were talking about, but then I eventually got there. Now it's even better. Of course, you changed my world a lot and showed me so many things. And going through, like WildFit, actually, I did it before you like came to my life in this way. You and my mom got together, speaking at academy.
Let me ask you, related to this, continuing on that same thought, you've wrestled with this whole, do I go to university? Do I not go? Do I delay going? And your mom and I and your dad and Lisa have sort of encouraged you to take a little gap time to figure that out for yourself. But you did want to keep your education going during that time, and you enrolled in the Jordan Peterson Academy. Tell me a bit about that.
It's been really exciting being like listening to the courses and being part of it, because I think as someone who is deciding if they want to go to university or like what they want to study, or even to anyone listening to things, you can get like a taste of different topics. For example, I did a course on brain plasticity with David Eagleman. That was super exciting. Like, I remember listening to the courses and I didn't want to stop. It made me so curious, and I, at that point at least, I didn't have like a second part or a follow-up, and I really wanted to do that. So I already started looking up like different things. They have so many different amazing courses. So I think it's good for anyone. If you have spare time from university, if you're like a grown-up at home, and that you can also do it in a way that's like basically listening to podcasts, I think. Or you can take it more seriously and take notes. But it's super interesting, and I'm really glad that they've done something like that.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, I spent some time with Jordan and went on his podcast, and I found him to be really just a genuinely interesting guy. He was very generous and warm, and I know he's not well at the moment, but I'm hoping that he recovers soon, because I think he should have you on his podcast. I think that it would be interesting to get that younger perspective.
That's a dream, but
well,
let's hope so.
All right. I want to go to, in your words, I described what Adulting with Emilia is about, but in your words, what is your podcast about?
It's about interviewing people with experience through the lens of a 20-year-old and helping my generation and all my listeners finding their inner compass in this world with so many different maps and so much information. So to make better decisions and, yes, celebrate not knowing.
You've already recorded many of the episodes. They'll be launching just after this one.
Yes.
Tell me some of the guests that you've really enjoyed. And I know you want to list all of them so nobody feels hurt, but just give me off.
No, it's the opposite. Do I tell them who they're going to be, or should I keep it secret?
Let's do a bit of both.
Okay.
Name one or two and we'll keep
Okay, I will name
secret.
2.
All right.
Okay.
It's a big reveal.
Paul McKenna and Marissa Peer.
Those are really two excellent guests. I mean, both very good friends of mine. And Paul, I've known for over 15 years because when I first started to get involved in speaking and teaching, I studied with Paul. I went to a course that was taught by him and Richard Bandler on neurolinguistic programming and so on, and Paul had a huge impact on me. So it's really been wonderful now to get to know him on the circuit and develop a friendship. I am very much looking forward to that episode. And Marissa, what an incredible woman that is. I'm always blown away by her perspectives and her humor and her generosity. So can you share?
Sorry, I just want to say she's so elegant and she has so many like magical stories that she feels like, I don't know, some like magical witch in a good way walking around. It's like hard to understand that her stories are actually like real.
She is.
It's crazy.
She is actually magical. Share one or two things. You don't have to say from whom, but one or two things that you've learned in the interviews you've done so far that you think have had an impact on you.
Okay, one of the really important things is, I think, especially for young people, is how big of an impact your surroundings, your everyday life, your room that you live in have on your life and your future. And yeah, maybe it can already tell what your future is going to be like, but you don't even know it. It's easy to have a busy life and have like really messy room. So yeah, that's something really interesting.
And have you found generally that interviewing people, say, changed your perspectives or changed your behavior? Like, is being the host of Adulting with Emilia improving your life? If you get to ask these experts, is it making a difference for you?
Of course, this is my favorite things. I can have these experts and I make them sit down, like put all these microphones and then ask all the questions I want to ask from them and make it feel important. Then share all these answers and knowledge with my generation and anyone who wants to listen.
That's excellent. So let me ask you two last questions. The one is, well, it's a series of them, but it's like, when are you launching and where can people find your podcast?
Well, this first episode is launching on 15th of December, and you can see it on Spotify, YouTube, and I think some other platforms that we will be announcing. And also I have my account on Substack now, and I will be posting there also, and maybe some behind the scenes thoughts and articles and just anything that I'm curious about.
Excellent. So we'll make sure to put that in our show notes and also in yours. And then last one is, your podcast is in a sense a coming of age podcast. It's like, we're going to grow up together. And so when you think of that, what does growing up mean to you?
Learning from my past experiences and always growing somewhere, trying new things and going through these different cycles of life and helping the next generations and like passing on the knowledge and just like gaining more knowledge. I don't even know.
No, that's very good.
Like that.
That's really good. Now, I'll tell you, I like it so much because
building, like putting the Legos.
Yeah. I like so much the reference you make to the coming generations, because I think something that's been lost is the passing of wisdom from generation to generation. I think that something happened in my grandparents' generation where they kept a lot of secrets. They didn't really tell us what was going on in their lives. And so then the next generation grows up without that wisdom. And then the next generation grows up without that wisdom. And so I think that what I've attempted to do in my life is to be the conduit of information passing from one generation to another. And I see you doing that as well. So I'm really proud of you. And I'm so excited to see your podcast properly launch and get out there. And I actually am already really interested, because while I've seen a few of the tapings, I have not seen any of the other episodes, and I'm not telling you who they are either. But I'm really looking forward to them. I will be definitely one of your very first subscribers. Thank you so much for taking the time with me today. It's a pleasure, as always, to be with you, but especially in this environment.
Thank you for introducing me to my audience, and now I will be taking over this podcast.
Hey, everybody. What an incredible episode and a real opportunity. I think that you're going to enjoy this journey with Emilia immensely. She is a deeply curious person, and she asks insightful questions and pulls great information out. So I think what you should probably be doing right now is hitting the subscribe button on whatever platform you're on and sharing this with anybody you know that might need some help adulting in this weird time we're in.